I think it was right after the election. Georgetown was trying to figure out what they wanted to do to support Dreamers, and Scott Fleming, who's the associate director for federal relations, uh, he sent out an email to a few Undocuhoyas and said, "Who's interested in sharing your story with Senator Durbin's staff?" And I was honestly really upset after the election, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And somehow I realized that sharing my story was the best thing that I could do. And so I responded back and said, like, yeah, sure.
We call them dreamers. I think the stories tell a lot more than any speech I can give. This young man here is Luis Gonzalez. Forgive me for being especially drawn to this photo because Luis is standing in front of my college, Georgetown University, and wearing one of the Georgetown Hoya shirts. Let me tell you about Luis. At 8 years old, his family came to the U.S. from Mexico. He had a difficult childhood in Santa Ana, California. Luis overcame these circumstances, still was a good student. He graduated from high school in the top 1% of his class, 4.69 GPA. Because of his outstanding record in high school, Luis was admitted to Georgetown University. He is currently a sophomore majoring in American Studies, minoring in government. He wrote me a letter, and here's what he said. DACA gave me the confidence and security I'd not had before. I lived in the fear and in the shadows. Thanks to DACA, however, I've been able to do things I otherwise wouldn't be able to do, like traveling through an airport or working on campus. I've always felt that I'm an American, but having DACA allowed me to stop living in constant fear and uncertainty. Now these fears have come back again. If DACA is eliminated, Luis could be forced back into the shadows.
I think there are some days when I consider Georgetown home. I don't know, depending on the mood that I sort of feel, the weather, the deadlines. There are times when I'm walking by Healy and I'm like, oh, like I belong here, like I like being here. And I think that would be a time when I consider Georgetown home. But then home is where my family is, so whether that's in Santa Ana or if we move somewhere else, home is where family is. There you go, you can just use that line. Someone that is super ignorant can say, like, go back to your country, but it's not really my country, or Mexico in this case, I don't know anything about. I know more U.S. history than probably the average American does, and I call the United States my home. Instead of asking people, where are you from, I like asking people, where's home?
Yeah, so I was born in Juventino Rosas, Guanajuato, and I grew up there for the first 4 years of my life. And I remember my dad used to work in the U.S., and so when he would come back to visit us for about a month, I did not want to hug him because I didn't know who he was. My mom saw that, along with the lack of economic opportunities and educational opportunities in Mexico, and decided to move us to the United States.
So my name is Elżbieta Goździak, and I'm a trained cultural anthropologist, double in medical anthropology, but really my identity is a migration scholar. I'm originally from Poland, as you can tell by my accent. I don't have here. I came to this country in 1984. Sometimes it feels like yesterday, but sometimes it feels like in a different lifetime. I came as a refugee myself, but sort of through the back door. So for many years I was undocumented myself, and kind of led the life in the shadows.
In January, was it 6th of 2003, we immigrated to the United States it was my older brother, my mom, and I. and we crossed the desert for a couple of hours, I think, or about a day, and then we crossed the river. And my mom tells me how, since I was a 4-year-old, I did not want to walk, and the guy that was helping us cross would put me on his shoulders and would help me cross. In Austin, I grew up like anyone else, really. I grew up in South Austin, attending public school there, and I didn't really think about my immigration status until I was in 8th grade in 2011 when my dad was detained by police at first because one of his passengers was not wearing a seatbelt. And so they stopped them, and he was sent to jail for about a day or two. And then after that, he was detained in a detention center right outside of San Antonio, Texas. And yeah, and then after that, it was a really tough month because my grandmother also passed away back in Mexico. And so my mom had to deal with her mom passing away and my dad being detained. And that's really when I realized what it meant to be undocumented in the United States.
I always tell my students that had I been a Mexican male, I probably would not be where I am today. You know, the white privilege and being a young woman definitely helped.
You know, just because we're undocumented, it doesn't mean we necessarily wanted to do it that way or that we had the ability to do it another way.
So we're punishing everybody who has done everything by the book.
You know, you just never know who's undocumented. It's not something that a lot of people are also comfortable with sharing. And so while you may not know it, you might actually know someone that is undocumented and they just haven't shared that with you.
Now today, I want to tell you my secret. One that I myself was not aware of for most of my life, and one that I generally hid until very recently. I'm undocumented. DACA has allowed 800,000 undocumented immigrants to get deferred action. With it comes a social security number, work authorization, and a temporary deferral from deportation. Essentially, we're given a document that documents the fact that we are undocumented. How generous, right? My parents immigrated here for the same reasons that many parents do. It was for my education and for me. And in the meantime, perhaps, an opportunity to pursue the American dream. My college acceptance letter was going to be the final "you made it" stamp on our immigrant story. It was going to be a sign that it had all been worth it.
My job was to get an education here, and that's really been my number one goal, is to get a degree for them and on their behalf, because I know that they have sacrificed a lot.
From the economics point of view, I mean, we've invested. All these young people, most of them went to public schools, right? So we paid for it. We, the taxpayer, paid for it. Well, why would we want to waste that? Why wouldn't we want them to go out to college, you know, and contribute, give back to the society that, you know, made the education possible?
Undocumented students are valued here in this university, and our stories are important. Yeah, we just need to continue that, continue to be present on Georgetown's campus.